afternoon, students. You are welcome to the class today. We are going to discuss various methods of teaching bookkeeping. As you know, bookkeeping is very important in the business world. It is therefore necessary to understand and carefully select appropriate and effective methods for its teaching. So today we are going to look at various methods of teaching bookkeeping. I believe you enjoy the class. Thank you. At the end of the lesson, you will be able to understand various methods of teaching bookkeeping and what to consider when selecting those methods. Bookkeeping is very important in the business studies, and it helps students to provide the basis for a sound economic education and for an understanding of economic policies. It is necessary to understand and carefully select methods and effective one that will help students to understand and learn bookkeeping and achieve the objectives of the subject. The teaching and learning by principle deductive problem solving approach is such that the principle will be presented to the students, the relevant principle will be presented to the students, and the students will kind of apply those principles to solve their problems. And by doing this, it gives them the in-depth knowledge of what the problem is all about. We have inductive or rule discovery approach. It's a method whereby you use one principle. One principle is being used to teach another principle of accounts. In that way, the student will be able to see this relationship that exists between both accounts because one principle is being used to teach another principle. Activity 1. 6 methods of teaching bookkeeping in the class. We have the fact process approach. In this method, it is always used for students in higher institutions. You can't use this method in primary or secondary school. This method makes students to think, and in that process of thinking, discover more facts for themselves. You can ask the students some questions, allow them to answer their own questions and provide answers. When you ask them the questions, they ask their own questions, they provide the answer. It helps the students to learn effectively. And this method is a method that can be practiced in higher institutions because it's kind of a method that mature students can be able to adapt to. So you don't use this kind of method in secondary school because when you like the students, for instance, in higher institutions, a lecturer can come and just pose one question and ask them to go and look for the answer or to go and do research about that particular question. And you see, students will know how to research about it. You can't expect a secondary school student to start researching, although some do, but it's hard to get. Maybe you see some in private school, but in our public school you find it difficult since students to go and research and come and ask questions and pose questions and provide answer for themselves. So this method is best used in higher institutions. Like we said, the lecture method, we have been discussing about lecture method, the teaching method that can be used in tertiary schools too. In tertiary school, where you have large classes and where you have mature students. When the teacher is teaching, you see that in universities, you find out that some students will listen, and after listening to that particular lecturer, they will go back and do their own research and make their own notes. And in that class, in that lecture method, like we said before, it has disadvantages. All these most slow learners are left behind, and sometimes you see students, they won't be able to grab, especially those people that like staying at the back. They will be left behind, and most and the learning rate is always low in lecture method. But to get lecture method perfectly well and effectively and embedded in teaching and learning processes, it has to be combined with other methods. And for instance, you can combine lecture method with audiovisual method, so that as you are teaching, then the students will be able to be kind of either listening to you or using the audiovisual method to kind of assimilate what you are teaching. So to get lecture method perfectly well and embedded it in the learning and teaching process, it is advised to use combination of methods to achieve lecture methods effectively. Attend to activity 2. See you in the class next week.